be wrong. I hope something happens and this isn't.
And we continue to watch in Jamaica tonight, Connell.
Hope for the best for those people. Have a good show tonight.
Indeed. All right. Thanks, Connell. Appreciate it. Hello. Good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Burman. This is The Hill on News Nation. Our coverage continues here on News Nation of Hurricane Melissa, that powerful Category 5 storm slamming into Jamaica. Winds at 185 miles per hour. We are live in the Caribbean later in the hour. Also tonight, go buy a Toyota? Why that was the message from President Trump while in Japan today.
I was just told by the Prime Minister that Toyota is going to be putting auto plants all over the United States to the tune of over $10 billion. So that's Toyota. So go out and buy a Toyota.
But does that contradict his America First policy? Meantime, back at home, this was the scene up on Capitol Hill today. The Vice President, J.D. Vance, meeting with Republicans as the nation nears what could become one of the longest, it's really now one of the top 3, government shutdowns in history. What he said today about paying the troops and where the White House just might be on that issue this evening. But first tonight, here from the Hill, Pam Bondi now investigating the Biden White House. The Attorney General writing today that her team has, quote, initiated a review of the Biden administration's reported use of Autopen for pardons, end quote. That statement comes after a 91-page report from Republicans on the House Oversight Committee. The report accuses Biden's close inner circle of covering up the former president's mental fitness, while also questioning if the president personally signed off on all clemency decisions towards the end of his presidency. Now, it stems from hours of testimony from top aides that were surrounding President Biden, including Jeff Zients, the former chief of staff. He told investigators that he called for a medical evaluation after Biden's only debate, you remember it, we all remember it, against President Trump.
I do recall post-debate having a discussion with Dr. O'Connor where I thought that it was important for the president to get a full workup.
And then there's Anita Dunn, a senior advisor to the former president. She testified that the concept of a cognitive test was discussed, but really only for political reasons.
The senior advisors decided that no matter how many tests he took, it would never really quiet the people who were attacking him in an election year on these issues. We did not have any concern about his ability to pass those tests.
The other issue, the use of the Autopen in the Biden administration, which, as you now know, is memorialized this way over at the Trump White House. The president, the current one, has railed on what happened with the Autopen at the end of the Biden term, especially to sign off on pardons. Zients, though, the former chief of staff, says that the president made every decision.
I don't want you to miss the rigor and the amount of iterations, the amount of time the president spent on pardons. He made these decisions, obviously, but he also made these decisions after, in most cases, many, many meetings.
All right, so I wanted to show you who the committee interviewed. This is who went up to Capitol Hill and testified. They include, for example, the former press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, officials Ian Sams, Andrew Bates, Jeff Zients, I've talked about him, chief of staff, Neera Tanden as well, Ashley Williams, a special assistant, Ronald Klain, who was a chief of staff to the president at one point, Steve Ricchetti, Mike Donnellan, Bruce Reed, Anita Dunn. This was part of the senior advisors, some of the inner circle there. Now, the former president's doctor, Kevin O'Connor, Joe Biden's former chief of staff, Anthony Bernal, and former deputy chief of staff, Annie Tomasini, these three here, they pled the fifth when they went up to the Hill. We'll get to one of the top Democrats on the committee in a moment, but first tonight, he is the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Congressman James Comer, who sent that report over today to the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and as you can see here tonight, Congressman Comer, Chairman Comer, joins us live here on the Hill. Thanks for being with us tonight, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I read through this 91-page report, Chairman. It's basically 2/3 of it is about the president's mental fitness at the time and the quote-unquote cover-up that you describe. And then the back third, give or take, is about the use of the Autopen. The term cover-up is mentioned in there, I believe, north of 60 times. But yet you have not accused anyone of a crime, Congressman. Do you believe that there needs to be a further investigation on whether crimes were committed in the Biden White House?
Yes, we do. And look, the president was shielded from everyone. Even these senior staffers admitted under oath that some of them would seem less than once a month that worked in the White House every day. Ian Sams, who was his press secretary, who gave daily press conferences during the Biden influence peddling investigation that I led, during the Robert Hur investigation. He gave daily briefings implying he was talking to President Biden. But when we got him under oath, he admitted he only saw President Biden in person
But is that a crime?
in 2 years. It's evidence of a cover-up. Every president in history communicates multiple times per week with their inner circle, except this president. Now, why is that relevant? It's relevant because this president, during the last 3 months of his presidency, during the lame duck period, just went haywire with the Autopen. They signed all these executive orders. They signed all of these pardons with an Autopen when 75% of the time, according to the White House records, Joe Biden was in the White House. There were no records. There were no notes. There was nothing in the National Archives that would demonstrate that Joe Biden played any role whatsoever in the decision-making process. There were inconsistencies with the testimony from all the different staffers on the use of the Autopen process. But one thing's consistent: every single staffer that used the Autopen, even the staffers that authorized the lower level staffers to use Autopen, none of them spoke directly to Joe Biden. And that's a concern, and that's why we think that Pam Bondi, based on our evidence and hours of testimony and all the emails, even the emails from the Merrick Garland Department of Justice that warned the Biden administration they were using the Autopen excessively on legal documents, we believe that there was a cover-up of the president's health. But we asked Pam Bondi to use all the tools in the Department of Justice toolbox to investigate this further, starting with Dr. O'Connor, the White House physician, who pled the Fifth Amendment.
So I hear you. Here's what President Biden, a spokesperson, said. Quote, President Biden made the decision of his presidency, made the decisions of his presidency. There was no conspiracy, no cover-up, and no wrongdoing. Congressional Republicans should stop focusing on political retribution. It doesn't seem like, Congressman, that there is a smoking gun example that you guys have put forward on the Autopen. Is there? What would you say to President Biden's team?
I would love to have a conversation with President Biden. I would love to do it on your show. Look, that's a statement. Why doesn't he come out and say that? It's the same thing. They shielded him from meeting with his inner circle. The White House physician, when asked under oath, were you ever told to lie about Joe Biden's health? He pled the Fifth Amendment. I mean, look, we all saw his decline. And if you want to see how bad a shape Joe Biden really was for an extended period, look at the Robert Hur video. That was the one time when Joe Biden, during the last year of his presidency, had to sit down for several hours and attempt to answer questions during that Robert Hur investigation. And it was pitiful. I mean, anyone who watches that video and listens to the audio and see how confused he was and how he couldn't answer questions. This is not a guy that could be able to go through thousands of pardons and determine whether or not they were worthy of a pardon or commutation. That's what the law states. That's what the Constitution states. Only the president has the power to pardon, not a staffer. He cannot delegate that to another staff. So we think the evidence is overwhelming that Joe Biden was in a mental decline. We wanted to press the White House physician, Dr. O'Connor, on this, but he pled the Fifth. That's why we referred him to the D.C. Board of Medical Association.
Yes, you have indeed, and I'm going to get to that here in a moment. On this issue of presidents and transparency, right? Because at the end of the day, you, like I mentioned, you used the word cover-up, and I guess sort of the opposite word of that would be transparency, right? We heard President Trump, or saw him on Air Force One, President Trump, just the other day, and he revealed that he had an MRI, and he didn't give any more details beyond that. Do you feel that the president deserves, or that the American public, rather, deserves an explanation from the current president when you talk about a 79-year-old president and receiving MRIs on exactly why he needed that and what was done?
I think that the American people deserve transparency on the health of a president. If they're 42 years old, it doesn't matter how old they are. That is something you give up. Being president of the United States, you give up your health privacy rights. It's our right to know what kind of physical condition the president of the United States is in, and I think that you should be transparent. One difference in Trump and Biden is he walks out and talks to the press and answers questions. He may not answer them to everyone's liking, but there is dialogue every day with the press when he makes a pardon, whether we agree with it or not. And I don't agree with all of President Trump's pardon. He makes a statement. Whether you agree with it or not, that he made the decision to pardon that particular individual. That's not the case with Biden. To this day, Joe Biden has never done an interview or given a statement on any of those pardons. And I mean, that is not how the process works. The president of the United States is the only one that has the authority to grant pardons. Joe Biden himself, in the one interview he's given post-presidency, told the New York Times that he wasn't involved in all the decision-making. He delegated that to his staff. That right there implicates Joe Biden. That's not how the pardon process works. Only the president has the ability to grant a pardon.
I told our audience, you know what we do here, Congressman, here from both sides. So I want to get to the other side of the aisle. He is the chairman, though, Congressman James Comer, top Republican on the House Oversight Committee, with us tonight here on the Hill. Thanks for the time, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Other side, as I mentioned, Congressman Suhas Subramanian, member, Democrat, Virginia, of the Oversight Committee as well, with us tonight here on the Hill. Congressman, thanks for being with us, sir. I played some of the videos there from what the president's top aides had testified. Under oath, it's all out there for anyone to see. Should Democrats feel embarrassed about how all this played out in the final months of the Biden administration?
No, I mean, what was also in the testimony and what was very clear was that Joe Biden was involved in all of the policy making and all of these decisions. He may have delegated specific tasks, but we all delegate tasks because there's a lot on a president's plate, right? And, this whole thing about the Autopen, I've not had one constituent in my entire district reach out to me about Joe Biden's Autopen. That's the reality. What they are reaching out to me about is about this government shutdown and how Republicans aren't here. They're also reaching out to me about the corruption in this Trump White House. This president used the Autopen quite a bit when he pardoned the January 6th insurrectionists. I wonder if he knows the names of all 1,500 people who were part of the insurrection that he pardoned. Certainly he knows George Santos's name, who he pardoned last week. I wonder if he used an Autopen for that. So I have lots of questions about this president's Autopen, but I certainly don't hear anyone caring about Joe Biden's Autopen.
What about Dr. Kevin O'Connor? He was the physician for President Biden at the time. Here's what he testified.
Were you ever told to lie about the president's health?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
He pled the Fifth. Does he owe the American people an explanation of what he saw, when he saw it, and what he believes?
I don't think the former president's physician really feels like he owes an explanation. Certainly, I agree that we should have transparency when it comes to the health of presidents. I'd like to see this president be more transparent about his own health, for instance. It sounds like Chairman Comer agrees with me, and so perhaps we can work on a letter together on making sure that the results of this president's physicals and health investigations are released to the public. And so, absolutely, I'm happy to have him turn that over, but it's really up to him at this point. Again, Joe Biden is no longer president. Donald Trump is president. I think it's more relevant to hear more about Donald Trump's health as well as his use of Autopen, which it seems to be quite a bit, maybe even more than Joe Biden.
All right. I told you we wanted to hear from both sides. Democrat from Virginia, the chairman from Kentucky, with us tonight here on the Hill. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Of course. All right. A lot more to get to tonight here on the Hill. That scene earlier today, the vice president up on the Hill talking to Republican senators. So is the military now going to get paid? Live on the other side with one senator who was in the room with the VP, plus Hurricane Melissa. It is devastating in the Caribbean right now. Live pictures as it makes landfall in Jamaica. The Hill, back on the other side. I'm Blake Burman. See you in 4 minutes.
We believe that we can continue to pay the troops on Friday. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to pay everybody because we've been handed a very bad hand by the Democrats. This is one of the reasons why you've seen some layoffs in the federal workforce.
Vice President J.D. Vance earlier today saying that the White House has figured out a way to pay the military during the ongoing government shutdown. He spoke there after leaving a meeting with Senate Republicans. Other federal workers, though, bracing tonight for their first missed paychecks as the government shutdown heads on into its 5th week, or at least first full. The Senate failing for a 13th time today to pass a short-term funding bill. Both parties dug in. A November 1st deadline also looming to fund critical services, including SNAP benefits for more than 40 million Americans. The focus now as well, how to pay federal workers. A Republican proposal to pay all federal workers during the shutdown is on the table. But the GOP measure would not restrict President Trump's ability to potentially fire federal workers like what's in the Democrats' bill. The Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson is proposing the legislation. He serves on both the Senate Finance and Budget Committees. Back with us tonight here on the Hill. Senator, thanks for being with us. Do you think you have the support for it? Where are you?
Well, Blake, first of all, the more accurate way to report this is the 13th time the Democrats refuse to open up the government. They've had 13 chances to vote for a clean CR like they did 13 times during the Biden administration for Biden-level spending levels, and they've refused. Unfortunately, they also voted against proceeding to my Shutdown Fairness Act last Thursday. But again, I've been willing to amend my bill to add furloughed workers to those being forced to work. I hope they'll take yes for an answer. We're working on the legislative language right now. I've been talking to public sector unions. They want the other difference between our bills is mine was permanent. Their bill they offered was only for 2026. The public unions, they want this change permanent. Again, they don't want to be used as pawns in these shutdown showdowns. I don't want shutdowns at all. The real solution, by the way, is the Eliminate Shutdown Act, which Democrats also voted against. But right now, they've got a chance to at least redeem themselves a little bit by joining with Republicans and vote to get on the Shutdown Fairness Act and pay these folks they're not only being forced to work, but also furloughed workers as well. That's a big concession on our part.
I should note, they would say they want to get a seat at the table with you to negotiate Obamacare subsidies. I just want to get both sides of the argument in for our viewers. You were inside the room with Vice President Vance today. What'd you make of what he told you, Senator? And in a way, does it sort of does it sort of lead to more resolve among Republicans of keeping the position as it is?
Well, again, the solution here is to vote for the House CR. And again, when you say negotiate with Democrats, we came with basically the final offer, the reasonable offer. The House didn't say pass a CR and cut $1.5 trillion so they could negotiate on Democrats' demand for increased spending $1.5 trillion. Now you got something to negotiate. Republicans started right from a reasonable position, the same type of CR that Democrats passed 13 times with Biden's spending levels. There's nothing to negotiate, quite honestly. Open up the government. We are happy to work with the Democrats to repair the damage done by Obamacare, transition to a system that actually worked, that would restrain the growth in premiums. That's not what Obamacare is. Obamacare has been a disaster. It's been a complete failure. They want the subsidies to mask what a failure Obamacare has been.
You know, last Monday, we were talking, Senator, here on the Hill, I think before anyone on television, about the comments that President Trump made aboard Air Force One about Argentinian beef. And there was some reporting out from Punchbowl today that in that meeting, GOP senators told the vice president that it was a quote-unquote insult, the president's comments as for farmers and ranchers, and that Vice President Vance at one point stood up and said, does anyone have questions not about beef? You're in Wisconsin, or from Wisconsin, represent Wisconsin. Is the administration on the wrong side of this issue? What was it like in the room when he brought it up? And where do you think the White House needs to go on this?
Well, that was a topic of conversation. But, you know, the flip side of that is President Trump is highly concerned about high beef prices, high grocery prices. Again, he got left enormous messes by the Biden administration. 40-year high inflation has driven these prices up. Beef is a particular situation. It has a number of causes. And Republican senators from particularly beef states definitely let the vice president understand what their ranchers are telling them.
All right. We'll leave it there. Senator Ron Johnson, he's got the bill with a little bit of movement there up on the Hill with us tonight here on the Hill. Thank you, sir.
Have a great night.
You as well. All right, still to come. Other side of the break. It is the storm of the century in parts of Caribbean. Quite literally the storm of the century. Melissa making landfall as a Category 5, 185 miles per hour. Other side of the break, live in the Caribbean with what they are feeling there.
Date 1.
6:30 on the dot here on the East Coast, 5:30 right now across Jamaica as the storm of the century is working its way across the island nation. Hurricane Melissa making landfall on the island earlier this morning, Category 5 storm with 185 mile per hour sustained winds. Live images right now out of Jamaica right there. It's now downgraded to a Category 4, but think about that sentence, downgraded to a 4. It's hitting the popular tourist destinations like Kingston, Montego Bay. Residents and tourists facing catastrophic situations there. At least 7 are dead already, but you know what happens here. That number is going to go up in the coming days and hours. And as Jamaica prepares to begin its long recovery, and it'll take weeks and months, the storm is now set to hit Cuba. This is a live look inside that country this evening. Meteorologist Max Paris joins us live from the Chicago Weather Center with where this is moving. Max.
So it's heading to the northeast, but still packing a punch, as you mentioned, as a Category 4 hurricane, 145 mile per hour winds. Pulling out of Montego Bay and the north side of the island, I want to show you above me just how brutal this is. This camera was down for a while as the worst of the winds were coming through. We're seeing the wind slack off, but notice palm trees snapped at the top, completely different than it should look, right? And that just shows the intensity of the storm system. If you are snapping palm trees that are used to, I guess you could say, those gustier winds, it really says something about the storm. So thankfully, the worst is over for Jamaica as this pulls offshore. We've lost the center of circulation, indicating that weakening trend may reform though as we have some more ocean water to go before this hits Cuba. Still going to be a Category 4 according to the Hurricane Center forecast, with 140 mile per hour gusts or sustained winds on the east side of the island. And farther north, we're talking about, a Category 3 possibly impacting some parts of the Bahamas before that continues weakening, maybe even impacting Bermuda, as if we didn't have enough islands impacted by this storm system. And Bermuda, mind you, has already had 3 close passes with hurricanes this season. Let's go over here and look at the alerts from the Hurricane Center, still showing Jamaica through the Bahamas under those hurricane warnings at this hour, tropical storm warnings for the Turks and Caicos. But I do want to show you that the worst of the winds were on the west side of Jamaica as that made landfall. Storm surge, though, on the southern coast up to 13 feet high, and that's continuing to move north with an 11-foot storm surge forecasted for southeastern Cuba. But the most widespread devastating impact here, of course, as we've been talking about for days, Blake, has been the rainfall. These totals are so extreme because of how slow the storm is moving, dumping rain over the same area. Up to 2 feet could come down for the mountains of southern Cuba. So clearly not done yet, but thankfully things are slowly but surely improving for Jamaica. Unfortunately, the sun is going down. They're not going to really be able to see the devastating scenes until we wake up tomorrow.
Yep, perhaps 40 inches of rain there. Max Paris with us live tonight. Max.
Awful.
Thank you. With us now here on the Hill, Anthony Thomas. He is the founder and owner of PipeSense Consulting. He is there in Jamaica in Negril. He's from Miami, but as you can see, joins us live tonight on the island. Anthony, how you doing? What do you see there?
We're doing the best we can right now. I just first want to say our prayers go out to the people who are on the other side of the island than us, because we was pretty lucky to be on this side that we on. The other side is taking a real bad beating. So my prayers and everything go out to those people first of all.
You're from Miami. You know what a hurricane's like. What'd you see there in Jamaica tonight or today?
Oh, right now it's devastation outside. Trees are broken down. Tables, benches are all strewn across the place. We can see the roof peeling off some of the buildings behind me. just devastation. The waves are raging, the wind, water. We just lost, well, I guess maybe a couple hours ago, we lost water here. We still have electric. So we have no water right now. And some people here don't have any Wi-Fi. So the hotel is working on getting the water back on for us. But as of right now, we don't have any water.
What's the government telling you there, if anything?
Well, I haven't heard anything about that. The hotel's been overwhelmed with so much stuff that they're not really answering the phone right now. They just open up the kitchen and they serving us hot food right now with what they can. But it's just devastation. Everything around here is trees, branches, everything, debris everywhere. So it's really not safe outside. But they open up the cafeteria just for a few minutes to let us in and get something to eat.
Stay safe out there. Anthony Thomas, as I hear from you on the other side of the island, but it is going to be just a horrific upcoming days, weeks, really, and months ahead for many there. Anthony, safe travels back when you can. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Of course. All right, with me now, Mick Mulvaney, former Trump White House Chief of Staff, News Nation contributor. Hello, sir.
Hello, Berman.
Obviously, the United States helps in times like this.
Yes, we do.
These are unusual times. The government is shut down.
Yep.
USAID has been folded into the State Department. That was a big conversation in, like February, March?
Correct.
Or so. What happens?
It's going to be really difficult, really difficult. Keep in mind, most of the time we deal with these things, we deal with them on American shores. And there's an entire way that money flows. It flows through FEMA. Actually, a lot of it goes to the United States Department of Agriculture. That's not the case when it's overseas. When it's overseas, you're really talking about the State Department, and that's going to be difficult to find any money during a shutdown.
So what happens?
Probably nothing until the government opens back up again. There could be a pot of money that they've squirreled away that's mandatory spending or unspent from this year's budget. But my guess is even if they found the money, they wouldn't have the people available to sort of deliver the funds.
Mick Mulvaney, I mean, you're from the South. You know what this is like. It's horrible times for those people ahead. And again,
it's going
to be a long night, a long couple weeks out there. Stay with us. Other side of the break. President Trump, he's in Japan right now. And he says that nation will make a big investment in the U.S.
Is going to be putting auto plants all over the United States to the tune of over $10 billion. So that's Toyota. So go out and buy a Toyota.
Did you hear that last part there? Go out and buy a Toyota? How about that message from the Commander-in-Chief? Other side.
As the country prepares to vote, News Nation is checking the pulse of the American people. Brian Enton is traveling the heartland for answers.
Hi. I'm Brian.
From Vermont to Utah, News Nation and Decision Desk HQ are driving the vote. Starts Wednesday at 6/5 Central on the Hill.
All right, so President Trump in Asia tonight, and earlier today, he had a meeting in Japan with the newly elected prime minister there, as well as a stop at the Yokosuka Naval Base, where the president, who has pledged America First as the mantra for his political career, made a comment to U.S. troops aboard the USS George Washington that might have some doing a double take. Watch.
And I was just told by the Prime Minister that Toyota is going to be putting auto plants all over the United States to the tune of over $10 billion. So that's Toyota. So go out and buy a Toyota.
Go out and buy a Toyota. Toyota, of course, a Japanese-made car. Full panel here with me now, Mick Mulvaney, former Chief of Staff in the first Trump administration. Nan Hayworth with us in person. How about that? Former Republican Congresswoman from New York. Dan Cannon back with us, former Battleground States Director for both the Biden and Harris campaigns. And Chris Hahn in person as well. We brought the New Yorkers down. News Nation political contributor. Hello to you all. Hello. Thanks for being here. Go buy a Toyota? Absolutely. Or I thought everything was to bring the manufacturing back, America-made.
This is what it's an American car. I mean, it's made in America by Americans. Yes, the company is foreign-owned, but my goodness gracious, I think Toyota makes more cars here than Ford does. Most Fords are put together either in Canada or Mexico, or not most, but a lot of them are. So anyway, yeah, I'd buy a Toyota, yes.
Dan?
I fully agree with Mick, and in fact, I have owned Toyotas. In fact, I own one now. But Mick's exactly right. And President Trump is rewarding our trading partners and rewarding our Japanese friends for that friendship and for that investment by saying, yes, by all means, I endorse buying a Toyota. And he's right.
I don't have a problem with a Japanese car building cars in this country and selling them here and creating jobs here. That's great. I did note there was no plans officially announced by Toyota to invest $10 billion. So let's see if that actually happens. But I'd rather see the president on America First back here talking to Democrats about ending the shutdown and showing some leadership and not on a foreign trip.
Well, he was at a naval base.
Sure. But we have a shutdown happening right now, which he could lead on and bring people together. And I think he can do that if he decides to.
And now, I would normally be the first person to jump down his throat for that, but I, too, own a Toyota, so I have a real hard time with that. But I agree with everything he said. You know what? If he really cares about American workers, he would get to this country and he would start negotiating with Democrats, because as we discussed, votes are not free, and he's supposed to be the great deal maker. Come on home, make a deal. With the same outer borough guy, Chuck's an outer borough guy, he's an outer borough guy, get together, figure it out.
Toyota, by the way, you were talking about sales, sold 185,000 vehicles in the U.S. last month, 629,000 in the last quarter, up 15% year over year. By the way, 47% of their sales were EVs. You know why?
Interesting. Well, the subsidies.
Correct, because the subsidies ended at the end of September from the One Big Beautiful Bill. Just a little Toyota nugget for you there. Meantime, speaking of green, remember this? From early last month, Bill Gates dining at the White House. At that point, sitting next to the First Lady and the President. Bill Gates, Donald Trump next to each other. What's going on? Whole lot of questions. Well, would you look at this today from Gates himself? Just 2 weeks before the big UN climate change powwow in Brazil, he is now saying, Bill Gates now saying, get this, he was wrong. A rise in temperature, he says, essentially, does not mean the end of the world.
It's important to understand the scale of the threat. Climate change is not going to end human civilization. Warming will have a big impact and change the way people live, but most of Earth will be very habitable for the foreseeable future.
No doomsday. Climate change, he says, his quote is serious, but we've made great progress. The doomsday outlook is causing much of the climate community to focus too much on near-term emission goals, and it's diverting resources, he says, from the most effective things we should be doing to improving life in a warming world. Cannon, I lived in Miami for a long time. I was told that in decades I wasn't going to have a home because the water was going to come and knock all the homes around and climate change and all the big stuff.
And now you don't. You live here, Blake.
And now I live here and I love it. But Bill Gates coming out and basically saying, I was wrong. No doomsday scenario on climate change, and we got to spend the money better.
Yeah.
Your world, heads are exploding.
I think that for a lot of activists, the caustic doomsday piece that Gates referenced is bad politics and bad policy. But if you want to attack problems and make people's lives better, whether it's affordability, whether it's mitigating on storm damage, whether it's mitigating on human health impacts of pollution, that's a way to reach people and solve problems. I think that's what he's saying. That framing is good. He's also acknowledging it still is a very big problem, but it's a different approach than saying the world's going to end tomorrow.
How many friends did he lose at the United Nations today?
I mean, look.
A lot.
By the way, Miami is probably going to sink in the next couple of years, whether or not he's right or wrong.
That's because
but you be very careful.
Everybody's moving to Miami,
You could pick a place. All the scenarios like this is going to happen and that's going to happen. I don't know if it will or won't. I'm not as smart as Bill Gates, and I don't pretend to be, nor will I ever. But that's not my point. My point is, I heard all these dire warnings, and Bill Gates, of all people, is like,
He's not, look, data changes, things changes. They're theories. People evolve on them, and we've made a lot of progress. But here's the other thing. We have to remember that there's also an affordability crisis in America, and we can't make things so out of reach that the average person can't afford it. We actually have to find ways to feed poor people in other countries, impoverished people. And if we are putting our resources into climate change, and while I do think it's important, we may be ignoring other present problems.
Sounds to me like my Democrat friends are all on board with getting off the climate wagon. I mean, I would love, I would love to sort of spike the football and say the
Cannon's definitely not.
Republicans have been saying this forever, but let's give credit where credit is due. If you can't change your own mind, you can't change anything. And if he's got new data, God bless him. That's great. Let's have the conversation.
I'd like to say thank you, Bjorn Lomborg, Michael Schellenberger, Alex Epstein, Chris Martz, all of whom, and there are others, have been advocates for a pragmatic approach to climate. Sadly, the green agenda, so-called green agenda, was basically, it turned out to be a gigantic gift to the Chinese Communist Party because of the technology.
And Al Gore.
Wind, and yes, and Al Gore, and Bill Gates to an extent as well, but because of the logistics and technology of wind and solar.
I'm going to give Dan.
Much better to take a practical.
I'm going to give Dan the last word here.
Look, the issue that Chris raised on affordability, the truth is that the cost curve on energy is changing rapidly in this country. And what he's saying in his video, if you watch the CBC video interview with Andrew Ross Sorkin, is that the cost curve is changing, the technological solutions on climate are getting better and better and better, and that's the thing that we need to price into all of this.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's not that climate change is not a big problem. It is. But there are pollution effects, there are hunger effects, there are starvation effects, and meet people where they are to solve their problems today and work on that at the same time.
All right, earlier today here on the Hill, led the show tonight talking with Congressman James Comer. He's the top Republican on the House Oversight Committee. He released a 91-page report claiming a quote-unquote cover-up from the Biden administration and the closest aides around him. And now the Department of Justice says it is looking into or reviewing the use of the Autopen. Part of my conversation with James Comer.
It's evidence of a cover-up. Every president in history communicates multiple times per week with their inner circle, except this president. Now, why is that relevant? It's relevant because this president, during the last 3 months of his presidency, during the lame duck period, just went haywire with the Autopen.
You, Mick, former White House Chief of Staff, were watching this. Yep. You are a Republican. You have questioned Joe Biden and what happened. And correct me if I'm wrong, was you think they've got nothing?
I saw they got nothing. They got no evidence. They've got cover-up is not an evidence. Right. President Biden came out and said, I approved these. Okay, unless they have evidence that that's false, they've got nothing. They've got politics and they've got a chance to get on television, but they have to have evidence that Joe Biden did not know what he was doing or that this was done without his approval. And I've seen none of that. Taking the fifth is not evidence of that. Not talking to your staff as regularly as a House Republican member thinks you ought to is just not evidence of that. I want to be with Comer on this one, but I also need the evidence. And right now, I don't see any.
Comer loves to cherry pick and say this is evidence and this is what happened. He is not telling the whole story. He never tells the whole story when it comes to a partisan issue like that. And I think we should take it with a grain of salt when he comes out and makes these statements.
You know Joe Biden. You worked for him. You ran his battleground states.
Yeah.
What'd you make of that 91-page report today?
I think Mick is right. There is nothing there. I mean, the folks that really mattered, who knew him best.
By the way, let me pause you for a second.
Yeah.
And you're not like an apologist. Like you've come out and criticized and questioned and all that.
Right, but I also think that the people that did testify, and most did, a few took the fifth, as Mick said, and you said, but most did testify, including Anita Dunn and Mike Donnellan and Jeff Zients, Chief of Staff, and they were candid, and they talked about the politics and their impression of the president. But at the end of the day, everyone believed that Joe Biden on our side could maybe get through that campaign, and we hoped he could, and he ran out of gas in the tank. And that was evident to everyone in real time. There was no cover-up in what was going on.
Right.
And this idea that a couple aides didn't see him often enough as some evidence of something is just nothing.
I think the Biden presidency was a betrayal of faith that a lot of good people put in him and in the process that by which he was chosen and by which he was urged to run for a second term. And I think that I agree with Mick and with Dan and Chris about the fact that it's circumstantial stuff, but it's not enough to really prove anything definitively in previously untested waters for an investigation or any sort of punitive action about something like this. But the damage has already been done, however. There was a level of trust that a lot of other folks thought should never have been put on Joe Biden as early as 2020. And that has to be recognized.
That's not the issue. The issues are the pardons valid. And
well, for sure, but at the root of the case is, was he competent?
Look, I mean, you can be competent to have a conversation and not make a speech. Right? You can be competent to make a decision and not be, the person who should be running for president.
We'll leave it there. We can talk about it all night.
The last time you tried to have a short segment with
I know. We had a short one and we would run.
Sorry about that.
Come on, thank you all. Appreciate it. We're back other side of the break.
What was this today?
Go on. All right, if you're just getting home trying to catch up on today's top stories, here's some of what's trending over at thehill.com. A judge orders Border Patrol's Bovino to give updates on Chicago operations. The senior Border Patrol official was ordered to appear in federal court in Chicago every weekday until November 5th. And how about this? Elon Musk launches what he's calling Grokpedia, AI-powered alternative to Wikipedia. The world's wealthiest man and the nonprofit alternative backed by AI, but still actually could use its predecessor, Wikipedia, as a source on some subjects. To check out those stories and more, all you have to do is head on over to thehill.com. By the way, scan that QR code on your screen. All right, there was a loud and sudden sound over the skies of this town, which you never hear here in Washington because this is a very strict no-fly zone. It turns out, though, it was quite the sight for those outdoors earlier today. Watch. Wow, how about that? That, of course, the world-famous Blue Angels. Would you look at it? Let's show it again. Buzzing right over the White House. The Pentagon telling NewsNation they conducted safety of flight requirements in support of the upcoming America 250 celebration. The translation there sounds like they just needed to get a test flight in before America's big birthday celebration next summer. But also perhaps a reminder that the Blue Angel pilots, part of the U.S. Navy. Keep in mind, those guys are flying. They don't know if their next paycheck is guaranteed, flying high in the air as the political fight continues on the ground here in Washington. I thank you very much for being with us tonight. Elizabeth Vargas reports coming up just seconds away. She is following, of course, the storm in Jamaica. I'm Blake.